and we're finally at my introduction to the series, Metroid Fusion. My experiences with the franchise up to that point was only with Super Smash Bros., and I've been trying to figure out what this series was ever since. But thanks to a random seller from Facebook, I was able to get a 3DS, and I talked about this in the first Metroid video, but thanks to that 3DS, I could see what I was missing.
And when I started, holy shit, I was unsettled. My first thought was, I did not know Nintendo made this horror game. They made several, but that's beside the point. I should start with the history here, because it's the oddest release for any franchise I've seen. So Super Metroid did pretty well, right? Well, it did, but apparently not enough, because the series took 8 years to get a new installment. You thought 4 or 5 years without a new Animal Crossing is bad. Metroid fans have been wondering if this was all they were ever gonna get in the series. But come about 8 years, we got Metroid Prime on the Nintendo GameCube, the series' first foray into the third dimension. And 1 day later, we got a direct sequel to Super Metroid in the form of Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance. We got 2 games around the same time after the Metroid drought. We surely thought we weren't going to wait a long time for a new game ever again. We were completely wrong, but I digress. So what exactly were they going to do with this sequel? Well, why not go from a free-roaming action-adventure game to a linear horror-esque quest for survival? The game starts off with Samus getting infected by a parasite known as X, and the scientists accompanying her had to get her suit surgically removed. She survives with the help of the Metroid serum made by the baby Metroid. Though she survives thanks again to the baby, the X has made quite a bit of damage to her body, with the remaining parts of her suit stuck to her. After her surgery, her next mission was to investigate an explosion in the biologic space labs, where her remaining suit parts were relocated. And here we learn everyone's missing and the place is pitch dark. It's like we're in the setting of an alien movie. Well, actually, that was kind of the series' inspiration. If you really look at the movies and compare it to Metroid, they are remarkably identical. From the female lead, the Metroids resembling facehuggers and xenomorphs in labor forms of the Metroid race. Even Ridley, one of the main antagonists, was named after the director of Aliens, Ridley Scott. I'm not even going to list everything, so I'll put a link down in the description so you can take a look. But while the series in general was more similar to the second movie, Aliens, this game is heavily inspired by the first movie with bits of Alien 4. I'll be honest, I'm not very familiar with the Alien movies, so I didn't really have the need to mention it. But since it's October and Fusion shows the similarities a lot more heavily, I felt it made sense to mention it here and get it over with. The story doesn't do much else to be expected, but it has a lot more dialogue compared to the other games. Yeah, Super Metroid had dialogue as well, but after the beginning, you get nothing more. Here, you're given information either from your computer CEO and from Samus herself during the elevator sections. Seriously, there really isn't anything. Oh yeah, there is one big thing about this. You're avoiding yourself. This is the SAX. You can figure out what the SA stands for. And it was the Parasite X that infected your suit. And it also absorbed your weapons, so it's vital for you to avoid this bitch. And I assure you, you will be terrified. And if you don't think so, the game will make sure of it. Every time it appears, you hear Samus's heartbeat during these sections, and it messes with you. The sound design in this game really hammers in the horror aesthetic, and it makes what is, honestly, just standard Metroid design a lot more intimidating. The music is also more ambient, and by extension, more horrific. The horror aesthetics don't stop by a presentation though. Every enemy in the game is an X-Parasite. The only life forms that aren't X-copies are your animal buddies from Super Metroid. Oh my gosh, you had a baby, good for you! It won't really help you since your species is dying out unless your baby is a different gender, so yeah, it was getting a little awkward, I'm sorry. Back to the X, thanks to the Metroid DNA and Samus, these little shits won't give you any more trouble. In fact, they're beneficial, as they're this game's form of health and ammunition.
In Metroid 2 and Super Metroid, you usually had 5 and 20 pieces being the most common. But it goes back to the original Metroid where the most common you get is 10.
Though the amount of X would kinda make up for that, you're going to be having a lot of trouble getting back to health without the need of grinding. I know Super Metroid had that problem too, but that didn't feel like a problem since certain spots felt like they were made for that kind of situation. Here it's all X, and while recharge stations make a return, they aren't as common this go around. In fact, most of them are located in the beginning of each section. There is another alternative in the form of these blue X, but at first they freeze you on contact, and since you're partially Metroid, you take a lot of damage. It's not until you get the various suit that you will be able to collect them for a good 30 pieces of energy. But even then, they're super rare, only found in 2 sections, and in one of them, they're only found in select rooms. Ammunition, however, is not as scarce, but that's also another draw since the X you can spawn seems rather random when you need both ammo and energy. And that's going to happen since, holy shit, these things give... yeah. 40 chunks of energy right there, and that's only for the smaller enemies. And while the bosses do take a lot more damage, they're not any worse in terms of fights. Take the Ceres here. This thing is built up as a thrashing monster tearing out the aqua area, and when you get to it, yeah, it hurts like a bitch, but it goes down no problem. Really, the only challenge about this fight is defeating the X afterwards, since you're in the water and your dodging capabilities are somewhat weakened. Some pose a threat like this floating condom, I know it has a name, but it's a floating condom, and hitting it with your missiles is fairly tight, like all condoms should. And if it does catch you, just shoot bombs into it. Oh, wait a minute, those subtle bastards. These Core X, as they're called, are no trouble at all. They shoot back if you hurt it, but you're not losing to them if your dodging skills are fairly competent. And all of them give you the ugly as shit Varia suit. Yeah, I don't like the look of the suit in this game, mostly the color choices with the design. And the beam upgrades like the charge beam and wide beam. Oh, it's a shotgun type of beam. Kinda makes the spacer beam a little useless. And then this thing, like it's not even moving and the missiles take it out no problem. Despite the fact that it's shooting out your spacer beam. Oh wait, no, it's a plasma beam, my bad. Okay, so the spacer is nowhere to be found. Odd. The other bosses do pack more of a challenge, but with some skill you'll take them down no problem. Except for the security robot and Ridley X. Oh, did I spoil that one? Who cares at this point? The security robot feels completely random. You won't be able to dodge the fire since you need to be climbing during the fights. Even the second fight with it makes you avoid the water, otherwise you get electrocuted. And Ridley X, I just ganged up on him and pumped missiles. It's almost impossible to dodge his attacks. Well, actually, there is one boss that got on my skin. Not because it was a problem, but it fulfilled the horror aesthetic this game is trying to fit into. The Nightmare. Yes, in a way that name is kinda odd. Why would you call one of your experiments the Nightmare? But when you're fighting it, you can see why. It may look like a robot on the outside, but when you're fighting it, it's really gross. But not as much when you get to the third phase. That's where it gets... What was this game rated again? Oh shit. As per usual, the bosses will give you your typical equipment, like the high jump, the speed booster, and by extension the shine spark, and the fan favorite screw attack. But there are a couple of new additions, and I do mean only a couple. I talked about the wide beam already, and the ice beam is replaced with this ice upgrade for missiles. The other notable upgrade is the diffusion missiles, which is very situational. The only time you'll ever use these, as far as I'm concerned, are these balloon monster things. So new upgrades are underwhelming, and some staples have been changed or just removed. But at least there's no X-ray scope, and that's all that matters.
They did get rid of one of the more popular exploits, especially from Metroid 2 and Super Metroid, the infinite bomb jump. It was such a fun way to secrets break in Metroid 2 and Super Metroid, and I'm glad they brought it back for Zero Mission and Samus Returns. In this game, the bomb explosions are a little delayed, so you can't do infinite bomb jumps to do any sequence breaking, which is kind of a shame, really.
But while all that is disappointing, Samus's overall mobility, not much so. She can hang on ledges this go around, which is a great addition, which also made the remakes much more fun than their originals. And this game also has the ability to climb on ladders and monkey bars. That may not be a huge deal, but it does make exploration feel a little more varied. Shame this is the only game that actually does this though. Samus's movement hasn't changed much since Super Metroid, though her horizontal movement seems a little slower and her jump is given a lot more horizontal range. It's not definite enough to notice from a glance, but it's enough when you're playing through these games back to back. The level design, as I stated, is very linear, and exploration isn't very encouraged until you grab every tool in the game. But that's where it gets a little annoying, since the only way you can get every item is to beat the game and use the continue option after the game ends, which will unlock the doors to each sector. That's annoying enough, but did you know that there is an ending where you get every item in 2 hours? I mean, getting to the end in 2 hours isn't too hard, honestly, if you take the time to find the shortcuts and plan accordingly. But this is absurd. Sure, it's not a big deal if you want to go through normally, but I'm that loon that actually wants to do this insane challenge one day. And I'm terrified. But speaking of the end, let's end things off with the climax. So after beating the security robot, you grab your way beam and open the doors. Yeah, I know, no entry without authorization. Shut your mouth. Well, what is behind the door is a Metroid breeding lab, and the SAX that got into the lab is not exactly happy with that as it tries to kill the Metroids with no effect. Eat, my pretties. Eat to your heart's content. After we blow the place up and detach it from the space lab, we learned of 2 things. One, the restricted lab was for the research and development of new Metroids, where they were being used for peaceful means according to Adam over here. And 2, there wasn't just one SAX, but a whole slew of the damn things. So we didn't exterminate the problem fully, just one fraction. Actually no, there's 3 things, because apparently the Federation wanted to stop Samus from destroying the SAX for research purposes, to the point where they tried to hold back the plasma beam and diffusion missiles.
Assholes.
This is also the first time Samus actually converses in the entire series, and this will be the first of only 2 times she ever speaks up, ever. And she's pretty much asking why they wanted to kill themselves just to capture these heartless abominations. After some persuasion, the authorized AI agrees to help Samus set the ship to self-destruct in SR-388. Yay, it's my turn to blow shit up for once. Or not. Yep, you're going to have to fight this thing, and holy shit, this thing is annoying! You're either going to shoot it with your charge beam over and over again, or... Ow. But after you take it down, it transforms into this grotesque, abstract creature. And after sniping the son of a bitch, you activate the self-destruct sequence and pump it to your ship. But there's one more obstacle. Omega Metroid! Okay, this is okay. I beat this thing before. Oh shit! Oh come on, how's this fair? Wait, is that the SA? Oh yes! Eat ice beam, bitch! With the Omega Metroid killed, the ship flies over to Samus, following up with her escape.
So with that said, playing Metroid Fusion after the other games, it's not as amazing as I thought it was. It's still an amazing game, and I still recommend it to anyone who wants to try it out. But in some regards, it's kind of clunky, especially with the difficulty as well as the pacing. The control and gameplay is very much improved. It has a great presentation, and the story is kind of complex, but it's also kind of interesting. Though I do think Zero Mission kind of does that a little better, and with that said, I think that is the better game out of all of them. And I also think Super Metroid is a better game consistently compared to Metroid Fusion. That doesn't mean this isn't a great game. It's still one of my favorites, and again, if you've never tried it out, maybe give it a shot. There is one more game to talk about in this retrospective, but I don't really mind waiting on that one. With that said, it is October. Should be getting ready for a certain holiday coming up. With that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll play with you guys